Hello and welcome back to Coach's Corner. This is a podcast designed for professional coaches looking to develop themselves in the fitness industry and improve their one-to-one coaching business. In this episode, I'm joined by special guest Doxie, and we discuss why PTs should compete in sport. Doxie is a very successful personal trainer and online coach, and she is based at GymBox Elephant and Castle. I met Doxie during the GymBox recruitment process, and now I work with her at Elephant. And Doxie and I was having a chat in the gym about sport and competing over the weekends, and then I thought let's have a podcast about it and share our experiences. So let's get her on. There she is. Hello Doxie, how are you?
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast. So like I said, in the intro, like we were chatting in the gym about competing in sport, and you're someone that's always competed in sport. I'm someone that's always competed in sport. We still do now, and we're kind of in an environment where we're actually surrounded by a lot of PTs that compete in sport, but we also come from environments where PTs don't compete. And I think there's a difference and it's quite obvious when you find a PT that competes in sport, and sport and fitness is their absolute passion. And for me as a PT, you need to absolutely love everything to do with fitness, and when you compete, it brings out a different side of you. I wanted just to dive into that. So I think it'd be good for us to talk about what you compete in, things you do, things you learn, things I compete in, and then we'll kind of have a bit of an overview and go into why we decided to bring this podcast up. So let's talk about you. What do you compete in? What's your background in sport? What are you doing now? What you got coming up?
So when I was younger, I did sprinting. I did sprinting for around 7 years, and I did that at a track back in North London. And it was great. I enjoyed it. And then I got a little bit older and could make my own decisions a little bit, but I didn't like my physique. As I got into my teenage years, I didn't like how skinny I was. I was very underweight and I wanted to get a bit more muscle. So I decided to join the gym and start
Yeah.
working out in the gym. And then I decided to get my qualification. And when I started working in the gym, I decided that I wanted to compete in a bikini bodybuilding show, and that was in 2019. So it's only been a couple to few years that I've been competing. I've done 6 shows so far. I have 2 to 4 shows maybe in November and December. I say maybe because you have to qualify for the finals for the
Oh,
last two
okay.
shows. And I'm currently 7.5 weeks out. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, very good. Did COVID affect any of your competitions? Were you like mid,
Um,
or was you not committed during COVID, or?
yes and no. So in March, when we kind of got the news, I was in France, so I had to travel back. And then I didn't do anything for
Right.
like for like 2 months. I didn't do much, yeah. And then I contacted my coach and worked with him to compete for a show in 2020 in November, and
Right.
we worked towards that show. So I was on prep during the lockdown. I think 1 month into prep, the gyms reopened, and then they had a random close again, and then it reopened. So it did
Yeah.
affect me in terms of training. I had to use my friend's back garden.
Yeah.
We trained in his garden, and then I had to like buy equipment and stuff like that. But eventually I got on stage and I looked my best. So no, because
Yeah.
of my like you have to be disciplined when you do it, whether
Yeah.
you don't have the equipment or not, or whether you're unfortunate with the stuff you have, you still have to go through with it if that is the decision you made to do. Since it was a choice of mine and I
Yeah.
was in my worst, like it was my worst starting point I'd ever had. And yeah, I did really good. I came third and second. So yeah, really,
Right.
really happy with that. But yeah, it was during the lockdown, funnily enough. And
Yeah.
I think like 2 weeks after my last show, then we went in that lockdown again where they closed the gyms until like the next April.
Yeah. That big 4 month one. That was like the killer, wasn't it? That
Hmm.
was like the killer blow. That four
Yeah.
month stint.
That was a stab in the back.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. So yeah, we've had two completely different worlds. I mean, I'm not in your bodybuilding world at all. My world's always been like sport in terms of team sports. I've always played rugby. After rugby, I
Hmm.
rowed. I had a rowing period for a year. Then once kind of in between rugby and as that was dying for me, and I say, well, rugby wasn't dying, my body was dying, and as I was moving away, as I was moving away from rugby, CrossFit kept coming into my life through CrossFit Open, turf games, competitions, and I was just doing those to fill the gap. But I was never really good at CrossFit. It's something I,
You're not even rating yourself.
it's something I could never win at. It's just like I was using it to fill a gap. I was using it to challenge myself to like learn new movements, and yeah, technically I was starting to do okay, but I was never gonna like really perform in CrossFit. But like through lockdown, I actually then found a love for cycling, and yeah, cycling and triathlon, and the world of triathlons has just been taking over my life recently. So
Mm,
I never really knew. Like they say with rugby, you never really retire. You retire like 4 times because it keeps calling you back. And I was deciding if I was going to go back, but there was no rugby for COVID for like 2 years. So like amateur
hmm.
rugby never returned. So I just was doing cycling, and that's been filling that mental gap for me. And I've just done the London Triathlon. I've just done the London Durathlon, so run, bike, run. And I've got a bike race this weekend actually in Belgium, which I'm really looking forward to. But my big event this year is
Yes, exciting.
the half Ironman in Greece at the end of October. So that's my big focus for the year. So all my training and life is getting dumped into prepping for Greece. So yeah, you're from the bodybuilding world. I've always been from like the cardio world and Greece, and my focus right now is
Yeah.
end of October. So let's talk about like having a sport and then training for a sport. So you have a coach, don't you, that sorts out your life, that does all your programming, and
Yeah.
what's your main learning, even as a PT, and you've been a PT for a little while now. You're an online coach as well, so you've been through all those processes. What's your learning from having a coach yourself and them finding areas to focus on, etc.?
So I worked with a few coaches, but my last two coaches, well, my current coach and my last coach in particular, Nick, were very hands-on. So,
Right.
for example, Nick was really into gut health, and gut health was super, super important because obviously the midsection when you do compete is super important. You need to be leaned down, and your health coming in and out of prep was very important to him. So reverse dieting was really important to him, as well as during the prep itself, and actually carrying a good physique whilst it's still in kind of the unhealthy zone, i.e., like the last couple weeks of prep and just coming out of it. But yeah, I mainly learned a lot of gut related stuff from him, which helped me a lot to transfer over to my clients. And I think, was it in 2020? Yeah, in 2020, that's when I decided to do a sports nutrition course. So I guess he inspired
Right.
me to do that and learn a little bit more about the health, but not just the basic health, and
Yeah.
just dive a little bit deeper in some areas. And now I'm
Yeah.
with my new coach, which is Meg, and she is an IFBB pro. And I have learned so far, I feel like I've learned a lot about how she creates her online coaching world and how she works with her clients. Now, every coach I've worked with, which is why I find online coaching so interesting. Well,
Yeah.
online coaching specifically with competitors compared to the everyday person, a lot of prep coaches will always have things on Excel or on
Right.
spreadsheet. They would
Yeah.
never have these fancy apps like most of the online
Yeah.
coaches you see are like, oh, join us app. And you know what? I find it so much more effective when you have a Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets because it's so much more personal and you don't feel like it's just copied and pasted, i.e., this app could just be transferred. So that's one thing I have given an option to my some of my clients as well. I'm like, do you want an app or do you want an Excel? So I just give them an option because I just used to give everyone Excel. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I guess,
that's
but
a good
also that could
thing.
also come from somebody like yourself that's so your coach is not trying to get you engaged in the program, right? You're going to be doing the program no matter what. So you don't mind
Yeah.
going into the fine detail, filling out Excel spreadsheets every day,
Mm,
where like the everyday person would like to probably would like to see an app with some videos to remind them of what the
mhm.
exercise is, and apps
Mhm.
make things cooler. But yeah, that's an interesting point actually. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I
Yeah, but
found
it's
it
it's
very
good.
eye-opening. I was like, hmm.
Yeah, I would say actually, for everyone that I have known in the gym world that's done bodybuilding, they've always had a coach, and that's quite a good. It's good for coaches to be coached in every aspect of either their business or their training. Like for me, I'm following a training program from a company called Wahoo Systems. So
Mm.
with the cycling world, I'm just looking at my bike. With the cycling world, you get a company called Wahoo, and they make a turbo. So you take your wheel off your bike, you put the turbo on, and then that basically turns your road bike into a watt bike. So you can cycle in your
Huh.
bedroom. So
Kind of
a lot
cool.
of yeah. So it's and then you basically have a program on an iPad, and you follow that program. So it just basically turns your road bike into an indoor bike, gives you like
Mhm.
wattage to go with, heart rate, and you can do a structured training program indoors. And the benefit of say using say a Wahoo turbo instead of like a fixed bike in the gym is that it's your bike. You get used to riding your bike, getting positioned on your bike, getting the miles in on your bike. So I'm following a program for Wahoo System that does my whole triathlon training because, I could just make up my own stuff and try to go from what I've learned,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, like, what do I know about swimming workouts? What do I know about programming swimming workouts for a half Ironman in 12 weeks? So
Mhm.
I like seeing different programs, and I'm just following that to the T, seeing what it feels like, and just letting them do all my programming for me. So programming for my bike,
Yeah.
my run, and my swim. And I feel as a coach, one of the best ways to improve yourself as a coach, of course you can go on different courses, do different studying, but I just think
No,
going
it's
through
having a
different,
coach.
yeah, having a coach and doing a different program, like
Mhm.
following a structured program that's, like when you write your own program, you definitely cherry pick your favorite exercises. You definitely do the things you want to do, and it's always
Mhm.
best when someone programs something that you never do or don't want to do, and then you just fit that in and work on your weaknesses and work on
Mhm.
a different style. Because I find every program you follow, you learn so much about what goes together, what rep ranges work, what strength
Mhm.
cycles work, and I just feel like as a way to constantly improve your education month in month out is to follow a structured program. So yeah,
Mhm.
um, when you're doing a sport, I tend to find those people always do sign up for programs, and that's another reason why I think it's a good idea for people to compete. Okay, good, good, good.
Yeah.
Right, so then that's what we both do. That's what we're following. Let's talk about event day. Event day for you, race day for me. Tell me about like the thing I like about like a race day on event day is that you're never ready, but when there's a timing, you have to be ready for that timing. So when
Mhm.
it's a race day, like for me and my cycling, well, I know I can cover the distance, but then when it's a day, okay, like when I was going to do the London Triathlon, if that wasn't locked in and I was just doing one on my own, I would just keep moving that day
Mhm.
back, right? You'll just keep progressing that day, moving those timings to the right, and then it will never happen. When you have a locked in diary, then you reverse engineer everything needs to happen, and then you're counting down the days. And I think turning up to a race day, you learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about the prep, what to do on the day, like the feelings you get, the pre-match nerves, and I find that's one of the best things about sport. And you must get the same in that final week, building up to going on stage, and then going on the stage itself.
Oh yeah, like we have a
Yeah,
peak week. So peak week is literally completely different to any other week during prep because there might be some water manipulation, there might be some changes of protein, there might be changes of carbs, you might be carb loading, you might not be carb loading, you might not be doing it like you eventually stop training and
yeah,
there's cardio reduces, leg day is like the beginning of the week and then there's no more. And you're just doing touch-up sessions. You have to know what your 50% is because you shouldn't go over that. But yeah, there's just like that whole week is just so different to the
yeah,
whole of prep, however long you've been prepping. And then when it gets to the day, it's exciting, but it's also really tiring.
Yeah.
More so for the women because the men go on in the morning. They're always the first on
Oh,
stage. The
okay.
men usually go on from, so if the show starts at 9, the guys are on from 9:30, maybe all the way up to 1 p.m. And then the ladies are on a little bit later. They normally start at like 2:30. But like there was this last show. This last show finished at 11:30 p.m. I literally
That's
felt
long.
so sorry
Long.
for the girls. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, wow. I felt so sorry for them. And it was just a really big show. They had 150 bikini athletes, and that's just one category. That's just bikini. So not the other categories, but I was just, yeah, I felt so
Yeah.
sorry for them. It's not ideal because they are depleted. They are like malnourished in a sense and they don't have
Mm.
any water in their system. They're dehydrated. Like, it's the worst situation. But hey, things
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah. With yeah, good thing about triathlon stuff is always early doors because they need you in the water early, and
Yeah.
then they need to close the road,
Yeah.
so there's only so much time. But for the London triathlon, like I had to wake up at 4 a.m. So you don't really sleep that night.
Damn.
And then you're up at 4 and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, routine. I know how much water I need to take in. I know how much caffeine I
Mhm.
need to have. I'm going to stretch in a certain way. I'm going to have this for breakfast, and then like you get to the venue, final stretch, final prep, and then there's like they're calling you
Mhm.
forward, and then you're walking towards the water, and then it's your wave's turn to go. Oh, but I love it. I love event day, and I love it. I think event days keep you accountable,
Yeah.
and then it gets you little wins throughout the year. Okay, yeah. So with sport, there's like a few other little like reasons PTs should compete in something, and just instead of just going through the motions of training or training just for aesthetically, I think it's always good to lead by example and do the big events.
Mhm.
And because I think when you go to an event or sign up to something, there is a bit of vulnerability that comes with that. You are exposing yourself to people to seeing um, like your results and how you're performing. But I think it's good to put yourself up and be tested. I think you learn so much about yourself when you do a sport, and whatever that sport is, whatever that looks like, to be tested, to be
Mhm.
exposed, and lead by example. I think as a fitness professional, you should always be. You don't have to compete all the bloody time, but like throughout your
Mm.
life, throughout your time in the PT, it's always good to kind of put your hand up and say, "I'm going to make this my focus this year and give this a go." And I had that
Mhm.
with rugby every weekend because that was just I'm in a league for the season, so that's all I talked about.
Mhm.
That's all I trained for. And then when I moved into CrossFit stuff, then it's like the CrossFit competitions coming up, and again I was like prepping for the comp, turning up on the day, competing, and
Mm.
then celebrating afterwards. But would you agree with that? Just in general, just everything that comes with competing is just so good for you as a coach.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because you want to inspire your clients at the same time, and you want to kind of go through what they go through. Like sometimes on a leg press, you're like, you just have to get it done. This is your goal, right? You have to do this
Hmm.
for your goal. You have to do X, Y, Z to get there. And then I try to relate it to myself. I'm like, well, I also have to do this. I have to do the same thing you're doing, but I just
Yeah,
have to do it that bit more because this is important for me the same way that's important for you. So it's just understanding, letting them know I understand the same thing they're
yeah,
going through, and just putting yourself in their place without being in their place because you're going through
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it's a good thing. 100% it's a good thing because sometimes you can just be so like, oh yeah, you need to do this. Why aren't you doing it? Oh, I don't understand why you're not doing it. And that will happen if you've never really worked hard for something and if you've never really wanted something enough to
yeah,
understand where they could be coming from. But
yeah,
yeah, it's hugely inspiring for them. Like so many of them tell me it's insane how disciplined I am with some of the stuff
yeah.
I do. But I
You
just
are.
let them know it's possible.
No, we talked about that the other day. You're very good at doing the boring things consistently well. And, I saw you there with your two water bottles measured out because you have to go through these in a certain time, eating at a
Yeah.
certain time. And it's just like, that's what you have to do when you, in sport, in fitness, as you're trying to fine
Yeah,
tune everything.
100%.
I track calories every single day, and I've been doing that for
Mhm.
months. And I track my sleep every single day because I know what works. I,
Yeah.
I do mobility every single day because it's all those little 1% gains everywhere that make the difference in the end.
Exactly.
Something a bit different, like for me, and I know you feel this as well, is being in the gym, you know, like the working day for the PT can vary quite a lot, and you could spend a lot of time in one place. And I don't think it matters how cool your gym is, and we work in a pretty cool place. You need to get away from it sometimes, you know, and treat it as your workplace, and then have your own time somewhere else, or is it consumes you too much? So when I play rugby, it was like, cool. When I play rugby, I don't even talk about myself as a rugby player anymore. I wouldn't even introduce myself as a rugby dude anymore. Every weekend it was, you know, something new. It was green, it was outside, it was with different people, and then that was like, then I spent all week training for it in the gym, clients, work, and on the weekend I was doing something different. And now it's like, you know, every weekend I'm out on the bike, I'm in the pool, I'm running or whatever, and it gets me away from the gym, and then I do my strength and conditioning stuff in the gym. Like you train in the odd gym, in a different gym now and then, don't you, on the weekends and some weekdays, just to get away from that environment, don't you?
Yeah, 100%. Like, sometimes I go to Zone Gym, which is back home in North London. Sometimes I go to King's Gym once or twice a week, depending on what my schedule is. But I always make time, at least once a week, to train outside of the gym I work at. Purely because I want to train with different equipment. I want to see different people. I don't want to stay complacent and locked away in the same bubble.
Yeah.
And I get to meet different people as well that compete, especially in King's Gym, because it is kind of the bodybuilding-esque kind of gym environment, and you're more likely to meet competitors in there. So that's also nice to meet a few people that will be competing, maybe in the same
Yeah.
shows and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I was just, well, what I found myself doing is, you know, like when I finished rugby and then I was just training on the weekends, it was like, okay, what, you know, where should I go train? Well, let's go train in my gym because all my kit's there. I like the setup,
Yeah.
you know, I might meet some new members as well. And then I just found myself being in the gym 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, and then I wasn't getting a break from that building, and I felt that kind of got on top of me a little bit. So like I like just having 5 solid days in the gym and then doing something different, and that kind of mixed up and kept
Yeah.
that gym as like what it needed to be for me. Apparently a lot of
Yeah.
CrossFit people actually suffer with that. You know, a lot of CrossFit coaches where they, you know, they become a CrossFit coach because they like competing in CrossFit, and they're like, well, if I become a CrossFit coach and work in a CrossFit gym, then I can train in those off-peak times and make money whilst I'm here and not pay for CrossFit memberships. And then they teach CrossFit, they train CrossFit, they then talk about CrossFit with new members all day, then they watch CrossFit, read about it, and it's just like that's them like
Oh, that's all they do. They live
yeah,
and
and
breathe it.
but in the same place, and then it kind of gets on top of them for a while. And I've heard that happen and make them crash, because I've heard some people like then end up leaving the CrossFit space to work somewhere else and then go there and then compete, because that's like a better split for them. Yeah, so I just think it's good to kind of have an event activity sometimes away from where you're working, because then when you go back in the gym, you're a little bit more professional. Like, I'm here to work and service other people, and I do my stuff in here, but also I have a life away from it as well. And I just think sometimes if you get stuck in a rut, that could be the reason, or if you're not liking your environment, that could sometimes be the reason it's too much. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you got any kind of points that I've kind of missed, or anything you want to bring up around competing, or do you think we've covered quite a bit?
Um,
I think it's probably
no,
about it,
I
isn't it?
guess it's just the discipline that comes with it.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I would touch on. Like the discipline that comes with it, is what I think some PTs would be very good at or would benefit from by
Yeah.
doing a competition, because they have to go through something for a long period of time. Like some of us go through cuts, and like some PTs go through cuts. They're like, okay, I want to lose weight for a said holiday. Okay, cool. And then they always kind of cut a corner, so maybe somewhere like, oh, it's okay. But
Yeah.
they need, if they were to go through something, say like me, I have no cheat meals. I have no off-plan meals. It's the same thing every day. Well, it's the same thing on a training day. It's the same thing on a non-training day. You have to hit certain steps every single day. You have to make sure you do your cardio without fail 5 times a week. You have to make sure you're sleeping at least 7 hours. You may have to make sure you're taking all your supplements. And I feel like there's half of that missing when you're not competing for something, and the other half is there when you're trying to work towards a holiday, because it's not
Yeah.
that important. And if you were to work for something that is that important in a sporting industry where you do need supplements, you do need good sleep, I think that would change some people's mindsets, or some PT's mindsets, some,
Yeah.
in terms of how they approach going about making plans and programs and discipline in general, because it
Yeah.
completely changes how you
Oh yeah.
view certain things. And like during when I cut, like I don't really think of food too much. I think because I know I'm gonna have it at the end of the road. But when people
Yeah.
do normal kind of oh, cutting for a wedding, that's all they think about. Like they're
Yeah.
constantly thinking of food because they're not
Yeah.
thinking about the end result and the
Yeah.
fact that they can be in the best shape of their life. People just think of what's missing rather than what you could have. But
Yeah.
hey,
Ah, yeah. Talk about discipline. That's a good point. Like I'm training. Like I normally do double sessions most day to get the volume I need in, to cover three sports as well as the strength and conditioning that goes with it. So, a
mm-hmm.
lot of times I'm doing double sessions in a day, and to do that double session, the only
Yeah,
time is to
nuts.
wake up at 5:30, 6. The only time I can do that, the double session. I normally train at 3 every day. So if I want to do double, I can only do it in the morning. And I
In
tell
the
you what is
morning.
discipline is turning up to an outdoor swimming pool at 6:30 in the morning. like it, two in Lido is absolutely freezing now.
Yeah.
It was sitting around 20 degrees for a little bit. It's dropped right down to 16 degrees now, and it's like the amount of times I walk to that swimming pool and nothing in me wants to go swimming at
Oh
6 a.m. and
no.
6:30 in the morning. But like I've got to get it done, and obviously you feel great afterwards. But when you put
Yeah.
yourself in that scenario, like I say, there's no option for me not to do it, because if I don't do it, every
Mm-hmm.
session counts in the bigger picture. and
Exactly.
and I know when it comes to the race day, if I've done the work, it will pay off. So
Mm-hmm.
I know I've just got to get up, go do that, and like
Get it done, right?
doing my long rides on the weekend are fine, are fun, they're sociable, they're whatever. But like the indoor turbos, which are all like set wattage and structured sessions, the early morning swims, yeah, they're tough. But
Mm-hmm.
like I say, when you sign up to an event, that's what sport gives you, and you put yourself through that process. So I guess to summarise then, go and compete in something because you won't regret it. If you whatever you like, whatever you're kind of into, maybe look at what events are coming up in 2023. If you're a cardio person, there's nothing but running events, biking events, triathlons. If you're if you're into
Even something
CrossFit,
fun like Tough Mudder.
yeah. And if you're into CrossFit, there's CrossFit comps, turf games comps that are always coming up. And if you're in competing, there's a whole world for that, different levels that you can
Mm.
jump into, right? Everyone starts somewhere with it, and you find someone that's doing it, ask some questions, get involved, and the learning curve is huge, but that's the best part. And I guess as a PT, it's always good to show your journey. And you've got really good at YouTube recently. I've noticed that, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly trying to get better on camera. But you're sharing your whole journey on YouTube, right? Which is sports giving you the opportunity to do that, and then engage with different people,
Yeah,
and good things. Only good things can come from that. Right, very
exactly.
good. Doxie, how do people find you? Where are you? What's your Instagram? What's your YouTube? What are you doing on there?
My Instagram is Doxie Fitness, Doxie dot fitness. Same with my YouTube, it's Doxie Fitness. I don't think there's a dot in between, but I think it's Doxie Fitness as well. So I'm on Instagram, I am on YouTube. I am very new to YouTube, so please don't mind me when I talk sometimes. I talk very fast sometimes, and I speak a lot with my hands, if you have already noticed that. But yeah, that is what I'm on. Those are the platforms I'm on.
Right, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Doxie, for being on. Yeah, the podcast is restarting back up, and I want to interview different PTs every week on a different subject, so we can all learn from each other. Thanks for watching. If you listen to this on Spotify, please subscribe to the Spotify page. If you're watching this on YouTube, then please subscribe to the page. It's so hard to get subscribers, but it supports the channel a ton if you do subscribe. So please do that. And yeah, I'll be back next week. Thank you, Doxie. Thanks for watching, everyone. And yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.